wrestling gimmicks. They're fun, right? Most of the time. Sometimes promotion gets them so wrong it derails your entire career. WWE sometimes do get steadfast on these concepts when they go, well, it worked way back then, there's been a long period between them, so why don't we try it again? They're basically Britney Spearsing it. So do you want to see 10 gimmicks that WWE did indeed do this with that you've now forgotten? My name is Simon Miller, and we're going to do exactly that. Number 10, the female superhero. Nikki Ash, of course, was inspired by the Hurricane. Today, in this day and age, if you are going to be a superhero in the world of pro wrestling, there has to be some connection to Shane Helms. He just did that character way too well. What we don't shout about enough, though, is his sidekick, who, of course, was none other than Molly Holly. Mighty Molly was just perfect at this role, though, especially because look at her comrades at the time. She had Hardcore Holly and she had Crash Holly, and they had very unique personalities, so she needed one too, and she found it in the superhero. Fast forward to 2021, and Nikki Cross felt the same, which is when she went to Vince McMahon and said, hey, I've got this great idea. Let's change my name to Nikki Ash, and the ASH would stand for Almost a Superhero. It is a wonderful idea behind this gimmick too. The whole point was to inspire the younger generation of wrestlers or the younger generation of whoever to say, believe in yourself and you can do whatever the flub you want to do. So I suppose she was a more cartoony version of John Cena, although at times he can be a cartoon. And this did start off well because Nikki became the women's champion when, of course, given the time frame, it was like 2021, well, the Vince McMahon curse struck, and because she didn't get over in 3 weeks, eventually, we just forgot about it. By 2022, Nikki Ash had gone back to Nikki Cross, and dare I say it, it was just a missed opportunity. Once again, go back to the likes of Hurricane Helms and Molly Holly. We could have done way more with this, and V didn't. Number 9, the Mad Max team. In late 2014, Connor and Victor, or the Ascension, were basically seen as the new Road Warriors. I mean, literally, when they came to the ring, people would go, wow, I think they really liked the Legion of Doom. It worked really well in NXT, but by the time they got called up to the main roster, JBL was instructed to go, these two are such idiots. They're basically just ripping off old tag teams from the past. And then the Ascension were meant to get wins, and that would make Bradshaw look like an idiot. But then all of a sudden Vince McMahon decided he didn't want to push the Ascension anymore. So now JBL was just speaking the truth. Wrestling. They can't act like the gimmick wasn't an updated version of all of these, right down to the face paint. I mean, I'm sure they're on the screen right now. They basically look identical, but it was meant to be an homage to the past. Of course, when you do break it all down, whether we're talking about the Legion of Doom / the Road Warriors or the Ascension, it all came from the Mad Max playbook. Go and watch those movies. And then soon after this, Victor and Connor were hanging out with the Cosmic Wasteland, which was indeed Stardust and Wade Barrett. Now, I do want to put some respect on their names. Even though this was the stupidest gimmick ever, my gosh, these four made it work. They made lemonade out of lemons. Still though, overall it was not good. And really, somebody these days should try and ape what the Legion of Doom did. They were one of the best. Number 8, the AntiAmerican Group. So this should have worked, but it didn't. Lance Storm, William Regal, Christian, and Test started to get mega heat for obvious reasons back in 2002, and they even had some controversy. Look at their t-shirts, they had the American flag upside down. Well, you just don't do that. When it kicked off in June as well, I think a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this will take off and be a huge success. And then by September, they were disbanded. Don't make me say it again, the 3-week curse. In this sense, the 3-month curse. It's not like they weren't committed either, and actually they dove headfirst into this, and of course, what excited fans from pre-2000 was that it felt very similar to the Hart Foundation. If you go back to 1997 World Wrestling Federation, oh my gosh, it's brilliant. The real big difference, though, is that while Bret Hart and co. got a bunch of TV time, the Un-Americans didn't, and they just got their asses kicked over and over. So eventually we're like, I don't need to be scared of you, you suck. Now eventually the Un-Americans did win the tag team titles, but again, go watch this era of WWE, and you tell me if those belts mean anything. I don't think they do. I really do think the concept was to take off where the Hearts had left off, but once again, 2002 was just an absolute roller coaster for the WWE. Nobody knew what they were doing, so we threw everything at the wall and just hoped that it sticked. And then when we did it, we ripped it off anyway. Number 7, the Wrestling Vampire. So Gangrel has made this his own. He has been doing it ever since the mid-90s, and he still performs on independent shows today. That guy deserves some kind of a medal. Or some blood, I suppose. He also made it to the very top of wrestling doing this gimmick, and so many people still love the Brood Let's not forget, it basically launched the careers of Edge and Christian. It also proved that you can be scared of the sun and still make it in sports entertainment. So lo and behold, when 2006 rolled around, somebody said, well, you know what we could try? We could go and get another vampire. This is when Kevin Thorne walked through the door, and I guess he had a darker presentation for what the undead was meant to be. But the issue was, before this, he had played Mordecai. Now listen, Mordecai was meant to get a mega push and take on The Undertaker. For the audience was like, no, we don't want that. They was already fighting from underneath. It got even worse too, because Kevin was put on the ECW brand, and man, hardcore fans didn't want that either, because ever since WWE had relaunched Extreme Championship Wrestling, everybody had realized, well, we're using the initials and that's about it. He also had Ariel with him, which was not the Disney princess, and I suppose the peak of all of this was WrestleMania 23, when we got that old ECW crew versus the new ECW crew. Soon after, he was let go. I just think the Attitude Era was so crazy you could get away with anything. And also, this wasn't that far removed from the late 90s, so people just weren't ready for another vampire. In 2025, I don't think you could get away with it either, unless they like feuded with the White Six or something. Now, I've said that out loud, please don't do it. Number 6, the Suma Wrestler. So how old were you when you learned that Yokozuna was not from Japan, and he was actually a dude from Samoa? I know, it kind of wrecks your brain. A bit like when you realize what Paul Bearer is all about. But yes, Vince McMahon sat him down and said, listen, this is exactly what you are going to be, and we're going to pair you up with Mr. Fuji. Now, Yokozuna was such a good worker, you probably could have said, oh, you're going to be a garbage man, and he would have figured it out, because he became the WWF champion, and he was flipping brilliant. As the rumor goes, though, and I suppose the aesthetic suggests this too, the same thing was told to Rikishi, which is why he did come out wearing the pants that he did decide to wear. Now, obviously, we soon pivoted on this, but Rikishi, given what was exposed, went on to make a career by sticking his ass in people's faces. Why not? Now, Big Keish must have been worried when he was first told this, because don't forget, beforehand, he'd also been the Sultan, but eventually he joined Too Cool, and this got so over, in 2000, we even went and turned this Mother Hubbard heel. Now, even though this is going to sound daft, given how well Yokozuna worked, it's kind of surprising that during this bad guy turn, we didn't say, hey, maybe you should do a similar gimmick, and instead we just called him the Bad Man, and gave him the most generic heel music you've ever heard in your life. Now, let's never talk about this again. My gosh, it did not work. Number 5, the Mar Patriot. Now, Bruce Pritchard has talked about this on his Something to Wrestle podcast, and apparently, Vince McMahon was never a fan of the masked babyface, which begs the question why he introduced the Patriot in 1997. But as you can see right now, he was exactly this, and even came out waving an American flag, and he saluted everyone, and he had Kurt Angle's theme. Not joking. He used Old Glory to wave in Bret Hart's face as well, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We quite literally did America versus Canada here, because Bret Hart hated America. It was really weird though, because do not forget around the same time, Bret was feuding with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was a much more real character, although if we do jump forward a few years, have a guess what Hulk Hogan was doing? Exactly this, but it was way more on the nose, and he was quite literally calling himself Mr. America. The story was totally insane as well, as Vince McMahon knew that it was Hulk beneath the mask, but we were all supposed to pretend that we didn't know, even though we did know, and Hulk Hogan would also be like, haha, of course it's me, but I'm not going to admit it. Now, you really couldn't suspend your disbelief with this at all. I mean, you could even see Hulk Hogan's weird hair, but yes, when you did sit down and you had watched these two characters, you could see where the inspiration came from. Number 4, the Intellectual Saviour. So we go back to the genius with this one, and that's right, he was the manager of the Beverly Brothers, as well as some other teams, and also in real life, was the brother of the Macho Man Randy Savage. We are talking about Lanny Poffo. Now, he was also a wrestler, so he would get involved in some matches here and there, but mostly he did pick teams that lost a lot. All things considered, he can't have been that smart. He also wore lots of robes, which I suppose is where the connection came from, because in 2012, who turned up in NXT? It was Damien Sandow. He quite literally called himself the Intellectual Saviour of the masses. Because of that, he all thought we were stupid heads, and this really did get over on the main roster, because of course he went on to become Mr. Money in the Bank. Unfortunately, he's also a footnote in history, as he then put that on the line and he lost, the first guy to do so. Damien would then go on to reinvent himself as the Miz's stunt double, which was super entertaining, and then WWE never let those two have a proper match, and after that he was let go. I mean, Wonders never cease. The thing is, though, the original gimmick did not need updating, and this is the kind of character that could work right now, especially in a modern NXT. If you could find the guy or the girl with the right persona to get this across, I think they really could piss everybody off. So once again, what's old can become new again. We've already talked about this. So if anybody would like my terrible ideas, I think we need a new intellectual savior right now. Number 3, the Million Dooll Man. Ted DiBiase pulled the winning ticket when he became the Million Dooll Man in the 80s. Because Vince McMahon was so desperate for fans to think all of this was real, he was able to live the life of luxury even away from the ring. Sounds pretty damn good. He soon became despised, especially after he tried to buy the WWF title. And because on-screen President Jack Tunney said, "You're not allowed to purchase belts, you idiot," Ted DiBiase was like, "Fine, I'll make my own." Which is when he introduced the $1 Million Belt. All of this eventually ties into 2010 because who turned up in the WWE? It was Ted DiBiase Jr. And for a while, ta-da! That championship was back. Now, fair play to the younger DiBiase because he tried so hard to make this work and he acted rich all the time. But 1, fans weren't willing to accept it. And 2, well, it just wasn't the right concept for the time. And it was not the right concept for this guy. By 2011, we had turned Ted babyface to see if that was going to work instead. And once again, it just didn't. And he fell foul to the same fate. And he got released too. It was so long ago now, I don't think many fans remember this, which is why we should try this again. And we sort of did it with Baron Corbin, where he became rich, but that was part of a bigger storyline. There's probably somebody I'm not even thinking of right now, but somebody coming in and going, ha ha ha, quite literally with the laugh, "I've got more money than you." Well, that will always work for obvious reasons. Number 2, the perfect mentor. So this one is mostly about Mr. Perfect, because not only was he absolutely brilliant in the ring, but when he became people's pseudo-managers, well, he was great at that too. He really did get into this early as well, because in 1996 he was managing Hunter Hearst Helmsley of all people. Also, don't forget the 1992 Royal Rumble when he was best friends with Ric Flair. Honestly, it's one of the best things you'll ever see in your life. Soon after all of this, Perfect did go to WCW though, but not before telling Triple H, "You should screw over Mark Merrow." When we jumped to 2002, and every single name I just threw at you does come together, because Evolution was born, and Ric Flair was basically managing none other than Triple H. When you do go and watch it now as well, you can just see the formula, and there is just something about the head guy also being a wrestler and telling you advice on how to win titles that just works. Once again, we could do it again. The only name I can come up with right now is Randy Orton. Don't forget we basically did that with Legacy, but that's before Randy became a proper veteran, whereas now he sits atop of that tree. You could even do it with somebody like CM Punk. I think that would be gravy. The ultimate benefit is that the wrestler that's just below you all of a sudden gets your star power, so even if they are already a star like Triple H was, well, by the end of it, man, you are just absolutely kicking ass. Number 1, the bad boy rapper. John Cena. Obviously, nobody is ever going to top this, because he took this gimmick and went on to become the biggest star in wrestling for around about 2 decades. WWE was so happy with this, though, that in 2009, they tried again. And do you know what they called the poor so-and-so that had to be a rapper in wrestling? Slam Master J. So on day 1, he was totally boned. Now this was Ray Gordy, so he did have wrestling legacy in his veins, and yes, the whole persona was meant to be a joke, but that did not make its way to the audience, and they were just like, "Why are you such a loser? We absolutely hate you." It got so bad we had to drop the gimmick entirely. By that point though, it was too little too late, which I talked about in the intro, and in 2010 he was let go, and that just seems totally unfair. You had basically asked him to copy John Cena, comedy or not. It was also during the PG era of WWE. So this guy, once again, was just a walking cartoon, and his name was Slam Master J. I mean, you would have been better off abbreviating this and calling him the SMJ. But I could be that because my middle name is Jeremy, and maybe I just got the letters screwed up. I don't know what we're talking about. Now, of course, there's going to be a bunch of other gimmicks that WWE did try for a round 2 and that didn't necessarily go so well. So drop me a comment below before you click the video on the screen, like the video, share the video, and please do subscribe. Otherwise, my friends, I hope you have a terrific day. Thank you for joining me as always. I will see you soon.